Welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Questions and Answers with Clayton, where you ask your real estate questions and I, Clayton, answer them. So I don't have a specific person for this week, but I get asked this question all the time, or different versions of it. And it's, Clayton, what kind of sellers are out there? Or what is a relocation seller versus a normal seller? What's a short sale? And how does that work? So it's a very interesting part of the industry, and it's something you really want to know as a buyer whenever you go to purchase a property is who's the seller, how's it being sold. So let's start out with REOs, or as you probably know them as foreclosures. So REOs stands for real estate owned, or bank owned is really another way to put it. So what happens is seller can't pay their bills and boom, next thing they know they get foreclosed on. Bank takes it, and usually once a bank takes one of those properties, it could take quite a while. It depends on who the bank was, who held that loan. And then the way to submit offers on those could be vastly different. So you have some that are online portals where you actually have to go in and do your bid through that online portal and cross your fingers, hope for the best. You have tax foreclosures, which there's some crazy stuff there. We'll save that for another time. But you go to the courthouse steps and you pay cash right then and there for the property if they don't pay their taxes in time. It's another version of foreclosures. You also have some that maybe a smaller bank, something that's in a small town. They might list it with a real estate agent, and it's almost like buying a property from a normal seller because it's under such a small roof that everything can be done really quickly, and those tend to be a lot easier and a lot smoother for the buyers. So your REOs are usually going to come with a lot more risk if you're a buyer, right? You're not going to know necessarily what you're getting. Hopefully you get the inspection. Utilities are hopefully on. Again, there's so many different situations that it can drastically change. Some you're not doing any inspections, you're buying it right then and there on the spot. So do your due diligence. Make sure you walk the property, take a good peek if you're not super experienced in flipping a property. You will find some every once in a while that are really clean, really nice, ready to go. But that's rare because usually when people are getting foreclosed on, they destroy the property, they sell everything they can to include the toilets. So seller can't pay their bills. There's a route a seller could go, and it's called a short sale. Now, it's deceiving. It's called a short sale, but there is nothing short about a short sale. The reason it's called a short sale is because the bank is allowing the seller to sell the house short of what they owe on the loan. So for number's sake, let's say they owe $300,000 on the house, but the house is only worth $250,000. What the seller has to do is go to the bank and ask the bank for permission to sell it for less, and they'll still end up typically owing that additional money. So in those short sales, a buyer will come up, and since the seller doesn't have any money, you're probably not getting any repairs done. Every once in a while you might have little things here and there, but what has to happen as a buyer is hopefully the seller's already gotten approval from their bank. If they haven't, it could be drawn out even longer, especially with bigger banks. You're talking months. So if it has been approved, the process can be quicker. By quicker, I mean 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Unfortunately, I don't know. Nobody knows. It's a guess. A lot of that communication's being done via fax. We still have those back in the dinosaur days. So you've got to fax stuff and then hope that they get it, and then they'll fax some stuff back, maybe, possibly. So they can be a big risk, especially for somebody that needs a house at a certain time, and I need to be in there, say, by end of the year. Good luck with a short sale. But you could find some good deals there if you're patient and you have that flexibility in time. Relocations. So relocations, love them and hate them massively. Like, there's some amazing relocation companies and some really, really bad ones out there. They sometimes just make life more difficult for everybody involved. So the way a relocation works is a seller is sitting there loving life, their job's great, and then their job comes to them and says, hey, we're moving you to Atlanta, or we're moving you across the country. And we are going to put together this package for you, and we're going to have a relocation company, and they're going to come in and help you, and sometimes they buy it, sometimes they don't. So if they haven't bought the property, a good relocation company is going to come in and they're going to get the property inspected by a couple of different inspectors. And then either the relocation company does it or the seller will go in and repair everything that's on that inspection list. Those are my favorite for buyers. Still want to get your inspection. But typically your inspector is going to not find very much, hopefully. And it's going to be something you can move forward with, as long as they had good inspectors and good vendors that came in and fixed things up. So those are best case scenarios. Those are my favorite houses to sell in situations like that. But then you have the other side, the side that I hate, and it's when you have a relocation company come in and they don't do anything except drag out the process. And what they end up doing is signing everything for the seller. So as a buyer, you send the offer in, it goes over to the listing agent presents it to the seller says, yeah, it looks great. And then they have to send it over to the relocation company, and hopefully they're going to be quick, but I've had times where it took them 4 days to respond and say, okay, yeah, we'll sign on this. And then they'll sign the documents, and now we'll finally have it and be able to rock and roll. So they can drag out the process in some cases, and then you've got to deal with that with the inspections and everything else. But then you have other times where it's nice and smooth and amazing, and they've done what I believe a relocation company should do for the amount they're getting paid. So you also have estate sales. Estate sales are somebody passed away and now there's family members, friends, whoever was in the will is now in charge of selling the property. Those could be easy, they could be hard, it depends on how many people are involved, and that's something you definitely want to find out before you write the offer. If you're the seller and you're doing an estate sale, you really want to try to get everybody on one page. It's honestly better when you could try to pinpoint one person and say, you are going to be the decision maker, the rest of us just agree with what you want to rock and roll with. That's a best case scenario because it makes things go a lot smoother. But as a buyer, you want to know how many people are involved in this transaction, because it could be one person, it could be 12, it could be 20 people that need to sign off on the seller side to move from process to process, which obviously more people, more dragged out time it takes, and more issues could pop up and then disagreements between those sellers. So they could be really good typically on those sales, not all the time, but what I would tend to see probably 80% of the time is those houses need to be fixed up quite a bit. They're older houses and haven't been remodeled in quite a while. But they could be really, really good deals for a buyer. So again, if you're the seller, just make sure everybody's on one page on estate sales. And if you're the buyer, make sure you know how many people are involved, just so you have a good idea of how long everything might take. I bet you thought that was it. It's not. We've got more. You also have divorces. Either they're getting divorced now or they've already gotten divorced, and then bankruptcies can sometimes fall in the same kind of aspect. And it's really nice when there's a court order that states this is how it's being done, here's the decision maker. Sometimes the court will make the real estate agent the decision maker, saying if it's a good offer, you tell them to sign, they sign. In some cases the court has to approve it. Typically, those are going to move pretty quickly because everything's already laid out and those judges are on top of stuff, typically. So those could be really smooth, but if it's a normal divorce where there's no courts involved, no attorneys involved, and they're kind of doing it on their own, they might have a real estate agent. Hopefully they're splitting on good terms. I've sold a lot of these, and if they're splitting on good terms, then it could be a very easy thing for the buyer and for the seller. Now, if they're bickering back and forth, it's just nasty, hopefully that real estate agent's able to find ways to kind of break through, split the two couples up, and be able to make things go as smoothly as possible. You're going to have a little bit of delay there because they're communicating with two separate people with everything instead of just one person or both people at one time. But they're typically not that bad for the most part. Then you have investors. Investors could be very interesting. Just know when they're investors, they are looking at their bottom line. They don't care about paint colors, they don't care about flooring colors or much of anything. They're just looking at their bottom line. So when it comes to negotiating with those investors, think about it as such. If you want little piddly things done, they'll do them sometimes, but if it doesn't make sense on their bottom line, they're not going to touch them. So that brings us to our normal sellers. They're either buying up, getting something bigger and nicer, or maybe they're buying down and buying something smaller and nicer or as nice. Those situations, they could be easy, they could be hard. You're dealing with people. You never know until you actually get in there. But it is very, very important to make sure that you know where you're buying the house from, the types of sellers that are out there, or the type of seller you're going to be. And that will definitely change how you negotiate. It'll change what repairs you ask for, don't ask for. Are you going to ask for repairs or money towards closing costs so you can do it yourself? And what kind of risk are you going to be taking? You know, it's real estate. There's always risk. You're buying a house. It could be a brand new house, and the roof could start leaking. You never know. But do your due diligence. Thanks for joining another episode of Real Estate Questions and Answers with Clayton. Don't forget, smash that like button if you learned something new. Leave a comment if you have any of your own real estate questions. And hit subscribe if you want to learn a little bit more about real estate. I'll see you next time.